I'm sure you can see my screen. So without any further ado, let's introduce Hina. So Hina is currently working as a senior UX researcher at Grab, Singapore. And 1.5 years before that, she was working at Google India. Her focus was, sorry, one second. I think I'm not sure who's,
Yeah, I think it's that you are not talking, we can go on.
one second. I'm gonna mute. Okay, yeah.
I think it's from Bina.
Yeah, I've already muted.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me go on. So, 1.5 years before joining Grab, she was working at Google India. Her focus was spent on working with the economically weaker population, both in urban and rural areas. So, a very interesting sort of focus area. And most people don't know that she has actually learned about UX research and design on the job itself because her educational background was very different. She had actually studied her bachelor's in journalism and her master's in fashion management. So, without further ado, let me allow Hina to share her screen.
All right, thank you so much, Radhika. Okay, thanks so much, Radhika, for such a warm welcome. And thanks everyone for joining this session on Sunday afternoon. I know this is about to be your tea time and you must be rolling in bed otherwise. So thanks so much for all the attention today. So today I will be giving a talk on design with people and not for people. This is going to be about a 60 minutes talk. Through this talk, my goal is to enable you with the practical tips and tools to carry out your own research. Here is the agenda for the talk. So we will be going through some learnings from the research study that I've done in the past. And then there will be a quick round of Q&A. Then we will take a short break. And then we'll come back and talk about remote research. All right. So if you guys are okay with this and don't have any question, can you give me a yay that we can start? Can I hear some noise?
Yeah.
Yay!
All
Yay.
right. Thank you. Great. Let's begin. So, okay, actually, before I will like jump into the case study and tell you like what projects I did, I know Radhika has given you my introduction, but I want to give you like I want to actually talk about a real milestone of my life, which was which kind of changed my life and the way I was functioning. So I was always an average student in school, and I'm still an average person. Like if you ask me something, I'll take some time to understand, but I'll tell you how that has really worked. And like that is actually not something that I feel now any more hesitant about. And actually, I feel more powerful about it. So I was in class 12 and I failed my pre-boards for business studies. It was a theoretical subject and I was really bad at mugging up all the content. Like whatever is written, I can't just read and write in the exam paper. So yeah, it was very natural. I finally like failed my pre-boards and I was also running away from the teacher who was teaching us business studies at that time. And then she finally called my parents and said one day that she will not let me appear for my board exams if I will not go and meet her. So, and then I finally decided, next day I went and I spoke to her and she asked me like, what is wrong? And I, for the first time, honestly told someone that I do not understand what I am reading. And that was the, like, when I said that to her, I felt so much lighter. You know how our books are, there is so much content written, there is no practical. And I was like stuck. I just don't know. How do I remember all of this and write in the exam paper? So it was the first time I did that. And so what she helped me like study few chapters and I scored 55, but it was not that. It was like telling her that I don't know something. The lightness of accepting something like this was really that changed me. So like I would just quote here Sarah Blakely, who said that embrace what you don't know, especially in the beginning, because what you don't know can become your greatest asset. And that was the time when I also took a conscious decision to embrace the unknown and really focus on finding answers. So if you ask me something, I will not say yes, yes, yes to it if I don't know. I will be like, can you explain this again to me? Or I will ask you the most basic question that people normally now struggle or maybe feel hesitant to ask in the room. I do that now all the time. So that was like, I think was a point which changed me when I decided that now I don't want to do anything that I don't understand. It was very overwhelming in the beginning because imagine you telling your parents that I studied in school for 14 years, I don't get it. I don't know what they taught. And they're like, okay. Now it was overwhelming because I had to start again. And I was really like, it was like, okay, I never understood geography. Now I have to try to figure out like what does that mean. And the more I realized that I was doing it, the more resilient that made me. Like you can see these ants, they never give up, they always look ahead, they stay positive, and they do all they can do. So this was actually the foundation of my life when I entered my career after 2006. When I did my bachelor's, my master's, I made sure that everything that I'm doing, and like everything that I am pursuing, I understand and I'm going ahead with that, and I stopped going behind the marks. If I don't understand something, I'm okay, I will only write in the exam what I understood. So that kind of changed things for me. So this was a good starting point. When I started my career, this really helped me because I was able to ask the most basic question. I do like I do a basic research, like how do you define agriculture? I will do even that kind of basic research, like basic search, and just try to understand what does that word even mean. And so this, everything that I'm telling you, the resilience I built over time, this was tested when I did this project. So this was one project that I worked on. It was a curriculum design. Like my client came to us and he wanted us to design the curriculum. It was really special for me because this was the first end-to-end project I did as a project manager. So let me tell you, like I started my career, like Radhika said, that I did not have design education and research background at all. So I started working in like 2 or 3 years into the career. This was my first design project, and where I had to do research and also design a curriculum for farmers. And we were a team of 3 people who worked on it. It was me and 2 design researchers who worked on the field. And then I have a manager who helped me throughout. So the background of this project was that my client, that they were sourcing gherkins from India, and the gherkin is like you can see here, it's a fruit from cucumber family. So my client was sourcing this from India and they were selling it in all over the world. So our client was working with some exporters in India who were helping them get the gherkins they produce from farmers. And so my client's concern was, this was the brief that was given to us, that despite providing all the tools, techniques, and support to farmers, these farmers are not adopting responsible farming practices. So responsible farming practices are the techniques that can improve the quality of crop. It can also save our natural resources like water, because there were some responsible farming practices which can help you use less of the resources, like you can use less water. It can also help you maintain the good quality of the soil that you were using, because if you will not be responsible while producing any crop, and you are using a lot of chemicals, that will eventually affect the soil. So these were the practices. Our client came to us and said that, oh, I don't know, we were giving everything to the farmers, but they're not adopting these practices. So this was not only affecting the crop, it was only affecting the farming families. Like imagine if the quality of your soil is deteriorating over time, then it will not be good for anything else. And if a farmer can't use its own field, its own soil to produce anything, they will not have money, and they will not be able to, they will be vulnerable in life moving forward, and they might not have enough earnings. So So like this was the brief and the background that they gave to us. So they came to us and said that they want us to design a curriculum on agriculture practices to encourage the adoption of these responsible farming practices among Gherkin farmers. So wow, a kid around. All right. So we tried to understand a little bit more, and our client told us that we asked them, okay, why are you doing this? What's your goal, like business goal in this? And they told us they want to double the yield. Yield means the produce of working crop. They wanted to double it up in 3 years, and so they also told us that the farmers are based in, like I was showing you, like they were based in Karnataka, Andhra, and Tamil Nadu and Telangana. Some of them were in Andhra Pradesh, but like, and they all have minimum education level, which means they can read and write. So we knew this much about the farmers, and we also asked them, so how does this, like, you are telling us that you have farmers, and then they are like, and then the gherkins they're producing is exported to other countries. So they explained it to us, how does this entire thing work? So there is one our client, they were working with some exporters who have a lot of branches in different states, and these branches have like 500 plus field staff who were working on the ground, and they were employed by these exporters. They were working on the ground with 15,000 plus farmers. So imagine the scale of the project that we were working on. So okay, we got this understanding, and then we moved ahead. Just like for Radhika, I can't see the chat anymore. So if there is anything you might have to, like, tell me what's going
All
on.
right. Yeah, no
Okay,
problem. Yeah.
right. So the project goal was very clear to us. Based on everything we understood, we decided to we'll design a curriculum on gherkin farming practices to encourage the adoption of these responsible farming practices among farmers. And the broad things that we research questions that we had, like based on the broad understanding we got from our client, that we will focus on understanding how do farmers really grow gherkin crop, and what are the roles and responsibilities of these supply chain members. Like you saw so many members, what are their roles and responsibilities, and what are the livelihood needs and aspirations of farmers and field officers. We really wanted to understand why farmers work, like what are they trying to achieve, what field officers are trying to achieve in life. This was just about the design, just to design the curriculum. What was out of scope was the technical content that goes in the curriculum. When I say that, so imagine like something like how much water to give to when you're growing gherkins. What should be the size of the land? What should be the distance between two seeds? Those were the technical content, and we were not responsible for that. Our client connected us to the some subject matter experts, and they were responsible for all of that information. So once we understood all of this, we decided that okay, we will go on field. These were the people who are actually affected, like who are running the show on the ground, which were the field staff and the farmers, and we will interview them and try to understand like how they work, what is going wrong, and like how they are working right now, what is the relationship between this field staff and farmers, and a lot of like other things. And with this plan, like a broad plan in place, we flew to Bangalore, where our client was based. Our client's India team was placed to run to do a kickoff workshop. You remember I was talking about the scale of this entire project. There were a lot of people involved. So we flew to Bangalore, and there was a kickoff workshop. So this was a huge workshop where about 60 to 80 people were invited. The purpose was to really align, like with these all these key stakeholders who are going to contribute to the content, who are actually responsible for implementing this curriculum on the ground. So the idea was to really like make them like look for their support and ask them to pledge that they will contribute to this curriculum. uh, and then once so we were very excited about this workshop. We went ahead, and our client organized this one for us, and we were very excited. And it was the first time we were meeting all of these people as well. Imagine like you are like we were based in Delhi, first time going to Bangalore, meeting very new people. They're doing their own business. They all know each other, but you don't know them. And what we found, we excitedly presented our plan as well, that we want to do research, and we are very excited about it, and we want your support, and we want to meet your farmers. And what we were getting was this. This is what we expected is going to happen, but this is what was happening. This was the reality of our situation at that time. Like, they were a little apprehensive about us. Not really, we were not able to gel well with them. Imagine, like, you are new and like you're not feeling part of the group, and we were very worried, like, what is going on? So that day we went back to the client's office, which was in Bangalore, and we like just asked them that we did a retrospective of what is going on, like what actually happened. And then they told us that our exporters, our partners, are not really confident about, they don't know who you are, and they're not confident about you. And that's where we realized that, oh, we don't have any relationship with them. How can they let us enter their world and let meet their people? And they don't trust us right now, so we have to build that kind of rapport with them. So that day, like, although we had this entire project plan ready, we changed it. We decided to stay back in the city for 2 3 more days, and we organized the one-on-one sessions with all of these partners. We wanted to meet all of them and really have a one-on-one relationship with them. We introduced ourselves, we told them what we do and how we are going to work on this curriculum, what is our vision. We also asked them what is their vision for the project. When we did that, we realized that they feel now a lot more comfortable. So a few things we did after that. One thing that I talked about, we set up these one-on-one meetings to build relationship with the people who are going to work on the project. Because if they are not there, you can go ahead and design like whatever wonderful product. If stakeholders are not in, they will not implement it. So you have to have a relationship with them. You also have to ensure that your stakeholders are involved at different stages. Like, you can't just meet them in the beginning and then you present them the end product. They don't know how you got from the beginning to the end. So what we did, we made sure that we are doing regular sharing sessions with them where we were showing them the progress of this curriculum. We also invited them to give feedback to us, because they are the industry experts. So you have to make them feel that they are the experts. So we started inviting them to give us feedback as well. And there was another thing which was not like maybe part of my work boundary, but I also made sure that I realized that they are very religious people. So I started wishing them on important festivals, which were really important for them, where they were taking leave and they were very happy about, they were preparing for. So in these conversations, they used to tell us that, oh, this festival is coming up. And so I made sure that I am building a relationship with them by doing things that means to them. And once we had all of their support, their buy-in, we went ahead and we did started the field work, because it was their people we were going to meet. So they were not that apprehensive about us anymore. And we went ahead and we started the field work. And then what happened? We were thinking, the way we planned everything, that okay, we will do 2 interviews a day, which is 2 farmers every day. They're going to be close by, and we will go and talk to them about their end-to-end gherkin, like how they are growing gherkins. So like, we'll talk to them talk to each of them about the whole process. And in reality, they were not turning up. Like, what happened, that we are going to meet a farmer, but then farmer is not available. Why? Because that is an important time for them to do a gherkin cultivation related activity. All of these farmers were at the different stages of cultivation. While some farmers say were still sowing the seeds, the other farmers were already seeing the crop growing. So it was important then became for us to really see the stages farmer in, and to observe that live stage, and also, like, maybe change the way we were approaching this recruitment, these interviews. We can't make a farmer sit with us for 2 3 hours and talk about the end-to-end process. Like, what users say and what they do is very different. So we decided that we will shadow the particular stage that they are, like, they are working on at that time, and we will only focus on that part, or that part of the interview with them, while we will touch upon the other things. But we just changed our plan at that time, when we started seeing that, oh, farmers might not be turning up and we might not have enough output from them. So what we did, like I said, we reorganized our interview sessions to shadow like specific stage of the cultivation. We focused interviews also with farmers on those specific activities. And we also made sure that we are going to meet farmer when they are available. Because you like if you want to really observe a person in their natural environment, you have to keep up with their time. They will carve out their time for you, but you also have to make sure to get very unbiased response. You have to observe that activity in that natural environment. So we modified our plan, and I remember my team used to start like from the home at 4 a.m 5 a.m because farmers are working in the morning. So we decided, okay, we will go and interview them in the morning then. So once we had all the data that we collected, that was the stage when we had to go from data to design. Like, data to where we have to see like what are the patterns and insights coming up and then translate that into the design. And that's where, like, you remember the three, like, things that we focus on, that how do farmers grow gherkin crop? What are the roles and responsibilities of these supply chain members who are involved in this process? And what are the livelihood needs and aspirations of these farmers and field officers? And this was a lot of data. And we were feeling overwhelmed. Like, how do we even handle this? And trust me, in that moment, we extended our timeline because we really had to go through so much of data. And it was about 30 to 40 people that we interviewed. And I personally was feeling very overwhelmed, like now where to start from. I know that we have to go to reach the design stage where we have to design the curriculum structure and its different elements, but how do I now process all of this information? And trust me, this was been a challenge for me for very long, until like 2 years ago when I was working in Google. I shared this experience with my manager. I told her that, once I collect so much data, I don't know what to do with it. Like, how do I process it? And she told me a simple trick. She just told me that why don't you go back to your research questions that you wanted to get answer to, and then just answer those questions, because that is where you started the research from. So that's where I built like what I did, like, the first question that we have, how do farmers grow gherkin crop? I started breaking that down into how do they carry out end-to-end gherkin cultivation and selling process, like, what is the journey that they go through, how do they adopt new farming tools and techniques, and how do they perceive sustainable farming practices, what are the current knowledge gaps that they have. So once I actually broke down these broad questions, it was easier to answer these specific questions. And over time I've learned another thing. So now, you're asking this question, but if you know that what decision you're trying to make out of this question, it reduces your time even further. So I know, like, for example, the first question, if you pick that up, your broad question was, how do farmers grow gherkin crop? One of the things I wanted to understand, the end-to-end journey. How am I going to use this end-to-end journey even if I learn about it? What is the decision I want to make out of learning this end-to-end journey? So I knew that, okay, I will use this to structure the curriculum topics. How do I go about, like, I need to understand how do farmers really think about this journey? What are the things they need at different stages? And this will help me structure the curriculum. And okay, so if we look at the second question, how do farmers adopt a new farming tool or technique? Imagine, like, I'm trying to understand how a person goes about learning about a new tool and then adopting it. What is the information flow that happens at that time? Like, how do they look for information? This helped us, like, imagine a new practice I want to introduce, which is drip irrigation. We want them to use drip irrigation. It's a responsible farming practice. And if we know that what kind of informations farmer look for to take a decision, I will present the same kind of information to them in the curriculum. So this is how, once you know that, okay, I want to ask user, like, we do this, I want to ask user why they are not using my product, but what will you do with this information? You have to be very clear about every decision you're going to make through your questions, and that makes your job a lot more easy, because then you can directly go back and look answers to that particular question and get to your design. Any questions so far? Is there
Hi,
anything
Hina.
on the
Yeah, I have a question.
yeah.
So, like you've said that you were doing it all first time. I mean, doing a stakeholders and I mean, doing a workshop and getting lots of, I mean, so many people along with the stakeholders on the
Right.
same place. And like you have said that you faced one challenge that people, I mean, partners were
Right.
not, were not able to cooperate at that point of time. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you started this conversation. So approximately then workshop, I mean, how much time then I mean, you must have planned for a couple of days probably or a week. Then how much
Yeah.
days it got extended?
I'll tell you, I'll talk about that. So, you know, how all of these things led to time, and I will talk about how we can manage it better. I have also had some learnings
Yeah.
throughout my career, so I will talk about that. Okay, so once we had all of this information, and this is something that I have arrived, after in these 7 years, this is the kind of clarity I've got now in 7 years of my career. So once we had those, we got the information. So this is how we what we did. So once we had so I what we
Hello.
yeah.
Hi, I think it's a bit, could you just mute yourself as she's responding to the question?
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you.
So I'll share some examples with you of what are the insights we got and how we ended up accommodating the design elements we accommodated based on that. So one of the insights that we got, that farmers perceive these for sustainable farming practices, sorry, the responsible farming practices expensive. They thought that, oh, now I have to adopt a new practice. I will have to buy those tools and equipments and everything. They were also unclear on the total investment they will have to make to adopt a practice. And interestingly, what we found that for farmers, um, money that they're putting in, it's not the direct expense in buying something. It was how many people they will need to implement the practice. They also wanted to know how much time they will take to implement that practice. So what we did, we created a separate section in each of the curriculum page. For every practice, we created this separate section where we told them the seeds will cost them about 10, for this one border crop one, that seeds will cost them about 10 rupees. It will take a time frame of 1 to 2 hours to do this activity end to end in their gherkin crop cultivation cycle, and they will need one person to do it. That means that farmer will not have to take anyone else's help and pay them. So now this is the kind of information that made their decision making easier. Now they will not think it's expensive. Now they know actually how much this is going to cost them. Then there was another one. So we realized that everyone is going to the farmers and telling them that you adopt this particular practice and you will save more money. But how? Somebody needs to tell them what is the systematic step-by-step process. So we realized that farmers are really struggling to understand the chain of benefits of sustainable farming practices. To give you an example, what they knew that you adopt drip irrigation and you will save money, but all of these steps in the middle were not covered. So when you ask farmers, they just say that, oh, they were telling me this and this, they told me that you adopt this and then you will get this, and but I don't know how. So that's where we realize the gap. Until you make someone understand that how this cycle works, why will they adopt it? And this is the same thing I talked about the stakeholders. If you will not involve stakeholders and meet them in the beginning and meet them at the end, they don't know how you arrived at this product design. So they will not adopt it. So you need their buy-in. And farmers are actually the highest stake, they're the most important stakeholders of this entire process. You need their buy-in. You need to be able to sell any practice to them for them to adopt. So we started creating these flowcharts in our curriculum, so that they understand that what is the systematic benefit that they can get out of it. This was another one. So we saw that because we met a lot of farmers, we saw that farmers really value of inputs of those field officers who express interest in their family health and well-being. So there were two kind of field officers who were working with the farmers. There was one set which were only going to the field, talking to them about a little bit like about their work and coming back. There was another set of farmers who were really like talking to them like, how's your family doing, and how's everything at home, and like, you know, how's the crop this time, and if they need any additional information. And farmers obviously had a better relationship with those field officers. So what we did, we created this curriculum, like entire curriculum, we created a storyline. That storyline was like that the curriculum will be explained to these farmers through a field officer, an ideal field officer that they can look up to. Because we also found that farmers, like if an expert will go and tell them you adopt this practice, they don't have a relationship with them. And also, like, you have to understand that uh, those who are doing farming, it's not like they are the first generation of it. Their families have been doing it. All the practices they are using, you want them to change it. Why would they listen to you? So they will only listen to someone they could look up to. And those people they could look up to were the good field officers. So for the entire curriculum, we created a good field officer character who helped them navigate through the entire curriculum and convince them that why they should be adopting a particular practice. There was another one. So we realized that everyone was forcing on these are a different kind of pest, and these are a different kind of insects that affect the crop. And farmers did not know the names, but they know exactly what is going on field. Like they know that if they see something, they know this is an insect and the kind of damage it is going to do. So where they needed help was like not the names. We realized that they want a very visual way of, like, you know, we needed a very visual way of explaining it to them and use, like, help them navigate information easily. So if I will imagine, I write like 20 types of insects and say that if you come across this problem, you can go to this page. That might not work because farmers don't know the name. So that's where we created a very visual curriculum for them, where they can just see an image, they tap on it, and that will take them to a particular insect related information, that how this insect works, what causes this kind of damage, and how they can now fix it. So these were like some of the examples that I wanted to show you, that when we got the research, the patterns that we found, and how that was linked to the design of the curriculum, how we actually design these small elements in the curriculum that we developed. So once we had the entire curriculum in place, it was time to look for feedback on curriculum from the stakeholders, because like I was talking about, these are the people whose buy-in we need eventually to really roll out this curriculum. And so what I did, I started when the curriculum was about to finish, we were close to the deadline. I started sharing sharing this design that we developed with all the stakeholders. And I was not getting any response. My manager said, you wait for a week, and I waited for a week. I sent them email telling them exactly what this curriculum is about and explaining everything, but I was not getting any response. And why? In reality, what was happening, that stakeholders did not get time to review the curriculum because it was way too long. It was about 500 slides curriculum that we created. So it was a big curriculum. So imagine someone gave you a thick book and say that, oh, study for this exam. You'll be like, this is too big, I can't read it. I will take out time, and the time will never come. So this impacted the timeline when I was not getting in response. And my client said that it's you who has to build relationship with these stakeholders and make sure that it can get implemented. So my client is out of it, my stakeholders are not reviewing it, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, what do I do now? So how we handle that? We identified, then we realized that giving everything to everyone will not help. It's a lot of content, lot of, like, you know, feedback. We are asking for a lot. So what we did, we started identifying that what is the expertise of these stakeholders. For example, like I was telling you that we got content from some of the experts, industry experts. We only reached out to industry experts for those particular section where they had to give me the feedback. For all the the exporters that we had, the stakeholders of those kind who were working with the farmers to get the crop, We only reached out to them about for the feedback related to the process. When we created this ideal farmer, then roles and responsibilities of the ideal farmer, sorry, field officer, we only looked for feedback on that. So when we divided our curriculum into pieces and reached out to specific stakeholder for a very specific and short, like feedback on a topic, these things started rolling again. But yes, that added to a lot of time for us. And finally we got a sign off from them. And but then yes, something that we're talking about, that time management. So I'll tell you what I learned about the time management. Actually, every step, even that kickoff meeting, farmers not showing up on time, everything adds to the time. So the one thing that I've learned about time management is that you need to keep it real. When you are planning your project, like what you are seeing here, planning, research, design, implementation, these are very broad phases. This is not the way to plan your time. You need to visualize, okay, I have to design, say, for example, sign up page of an app. You think of all the screens that goes into it. You think of how much time you will take to do the design exploration and then do the actual design for your app. Think of every single activity you will go through and you list that down, and then you assign time to it. And that's how you, if you, the thorough, like, time planning you will do, the safer you will be. Otherwise your client will come back to you because you never thought about the details, like every single day detail. And because you did not think about it, now you're overwhelmed because you overpromised. And the second thing, something we don't do, okay, you've created a weekly plan, account for the holidays, buffer for all the dependencies. Like when I was telling you that stakeholders did not give us like feedback for a week, there was a dependency. I should have been clear to my client that there might be, I might need more time here if I do not get response for this person. So you have to think about these dependency also very proactively. Think of the holidays and these and account for that time. And the most important thing, when you're planning projects, we forget, which is your personal time. Imagine you get a timeline for, like, you are planning a project and you're like, oh, I want to do this in lesser time, I will skip gym. Why would you skip gym? You should not, because when you go to gym, you know that it makes you feel better. Why would you miss that movie with your friend? So work, but also balance it with your personal life. If you will only plan your project and will not think of like your holistic time, then you will burn out easily. And this is the kind of time management and the planning that you need to do. And at the same time, keep your stakeholders informed the entire time. I did go through some situations when it's filled over for 2 days, but I did not inform my client. But that hampered other timelines. And who looked bad? Me. So, you have to be very careful about this, and you have to, like, be upfront about that. Listen, I am going to I need another day. I need 2 more days because this is the kind of amount of work that I still have to do, and I cannot do it like tonight. So, you like do all of this communication in advance with them. And so yeah, so like I said, the moral of my story so far has keep the larger goal of your, like, what you are doing in mind, and be very systematic and thorough in your process, and that will really help you sail through the journey, however overwhelming it is for you. This project was extremely overwhelming for me as a person with no, like, design background. I was the manager and who was taking care of this entire project, so I was supposed to have the larger vision in mind the entire time. So it was important for me to make sure that my team understands and I'm following all the steps so that I have the right output in place.